Okay, so let's start actually in my source sheet that I sent out. We're doing here Siman Shin Vav in Hilchot Shabbat, and there's a song that a lot of people sing on Shabbat, my Yedidut, and I sent it out to you. And if you look at the paragraph that starts Chet, Chafatzecha, right? It says Chafatzecha Asurim, right? What does it mean, Chafatzecha Asurim? According to Yeshayahu, what does that mean, Chafatzecha Asurim?
Chapatzecha could really mean a rechush. Chaypetz is often used as a term of a rechush. So your valuable things.
As opposed to chefetze, as opposed to which chefetzim that are not included in that?
Well, chatzei shemayim.
Exactly, chatzei shemayim. Chafatzecha asurim, which means to be involved with your own business matters. V'gam lachshov cheshbonot. Now, what about lachov cheshbonot? Does that mean thinking of them? But aren't you allowed here? The next line says here hurim utarim. So what does gam lachshov cheshbonot mean?
Calculation. Calculating as opposed to just like thinking, oh, I need to do X, Y, Z, or discuss being like, oh, I owe $230 to so and so.
Right. It might mean cheshbonot like baal peh, like you say it. Maybe you have to say it. Maybe if you just think, even if you think I owe somebody $50, that's allowed. Now, what about this? Ulishadecha banot. Ulishadecha banot. Doesn't that sound like it means, like, obviously you could like say, oh, why don't you go and date this person? Well, what would be the problem of that? Why would that?
In certain cases, it might be some kind of business transaction.
Right, it might be a business transaction. Because the next one,
the question is that makes money.
V'tinok lalamdo sefer. That's for sure. You're allowed to sit and learn a sefer with your child. So why is that even a havamina? What does it really mean? Yeah, Max Buchtal.
Right. Hiring someone or talking about.
Right.
Right. It doesn't mean tinok lalamdo sefer. Exactly. It means hiring somebody. So also l'shadek banot might also mean like to hire somebody, like to pay, to say, would you be the shadchan for my daughter? Would you find somebody for my son or daughter?
You're adding that.
Yeah, I'm adding that, but I'm trying to figure out.
I think you're right. But I'm just saying that's an addition.
But for sure, tinok lalamdo sefer, the mishorer, the poet here means not to sit and learn. That's obviously mutter. It means to hire somebody.
Well, Rav Nachum, I think there's actually two. There's the hiring, and then the first parak of Shabbat. There's a whole thing about that the person teaching the kids is allowed to look at the text by the light. We're not concerned that he's going to tip the light over and to try and get more oil in it. That there's also there's a fear of reading by lights on Shabbat. But
yeah.
If you're teaching kids, we trust that you're not going to do that. They're going to kind of watch out for each other and make sure you don't. And you as
you're on your best behavior.
Yeah,
you got to be on your best behavior in front of the kids because you're actually being his Rebbe there.
Exactly.
Anyway, I just thought this is an interesting song because it is really. The truth is, the whole song is Yeshayahu. Even the next one, Hiluchat Yebenachat, you have to walk. We learned that already in a difference in Siman Shin Aleph. You have to walk quietly. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's really a halachic treatise or a summary, halachic summary, I guess.
There's also quite a bit of positive
things
that encouraging you to do, not just the Isurim. That's why I never understood that about the Tinok Lalamdo Sefer, because you're immediately switching now to the things that are just Meshubachim on Shabbat, like, unless I don't know this part too. We're not in only listing potential Isurim. We're also just listing oneg and mitzvot and positive things.
No, Tinok, right? The Tinok, you could teach him. Obviously, it's a positive thing. You could, but
I mean, a
not
potential
negative thing.
isser.
Either way, it's not a negative thing. You can go and hire somebody to teach your child.
Right,
B'vakasha.
but you're pointing to potential issers that are not isurim.
Right. Well, I'm trying to
But
say
some of
what's
them are
his
not
Kiddush.
potentially isurim.
Right.
Oh, but the Lahagot being Ray Shefer is going to be, as opposed to like, right, to talk about either to read books like Sefer Emmanuel, which we'll see, right, which is Asur both on Shabbat and generally, but also not today. But also like to have just like, we'll see this today, right? Just like regular conversations of like, those might be problematic on Shabbos unless they bring oneg. So.
In other words, you're saying also in the
And that's
Imre
potential.
Shefer, you see like a kind of isser because we're saying don't talk about things that are not pleasant.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Right. I mean, all these things are positive things, except for the first line, Chavatzecha Asurim. And Gam Nachshov Hashpanot. But all the others are positive, but they're positive. I'm just saying there's a Havam, he's not just telling you obvious thing, he's telling you actually the Shulchan Aruch. He's clearly referring to the Yeshayahu and to the Simanim that we learned. Okay, let's jump into the Eruvin. I sort of jumped in the middle of the sugi here, but I didn't want to read everything. The Eruvin and Daf Lamed Chet, the end of the Lamed Chet. Somebody want to read that quickly? Reuven Peretz?
I could give it a shot. Haditanya velo yalech adam lesafsadehu liyadam ha'ischicha. So there's a Tanya which basically says that man shouldn't go to at the end of his field to see what kind of repairs is needed. Kayotzibo, similarly, petach medina, shikanes lamechat miyad. One shouldn't travel to the limits of the city to go to the public bath right after Shabbat.
Right. And now the Gemara this is in the middle of a sugya, so it's just saying, V'hadarbe, is this contradicting what we said before? He said, Velohi. So go on.
Shamale velo hadarbe. So he heard that and he didn't change his opinion.
And
Ata
what's
mucha milta.
Right.
I think if I understood this correctly, it has something to do with the Eruv.
No. Hata muchach milta, hachalav muchach miltahi. In one of the case, in the case that here it says you can't go to their fields and you can't go to these things. That's because muchacha milta. Wait, hata muchacha hachalav muchacha miltahi. What hacha here means the previous case that we didn't see.
Yeah.
In our case, hatam, which is the case we just quoted, muchacha milta. It's clear. What's muchacha milta means? It's the matter is clear.
Right. No, we're
Clear
talking
and
about
transparent.
The matter becomes clear.
Right. We're talking about the fact
clear.
that
What is clear?
That Motzei Shabbos, he's in the Schwitz.
You're saying it becomes
It's
clear.
Muchach Milsa, the Milsa of how he acts. All of a sudden he's in the Schwitz. That shows his kavanah of going to the soap of the.
No, but what about the first case? The first case is not. He's not going to do anything after Shabbat. He's just going to the edges of his field to see what this tree needs. I better come here. He's thinking to himself, I better come here Motzei Shabbat or Sunday and give this tree a good pruning. Or this tree has a lot of apples on it. I'll come here and pick them.
That's not allowed?
Joel?
I think if we look at the Rashi, right, it seems to be like that there's no other choice except he has to be doing it. He's sitting at the end of the Dechum because he's clearly going to the bathhouse, or he's clearly,
and also in the right. So what is this like? So what is this? So okay, so it's what's clear? It's you sort of said it. It's clear. His actions are clear.
Because what other reason would you have to go to the limits of the city on Shabbat, and what other reasons would you have to go to the end of your field during Shabbat? It's muchach milta that is going there to either fix whatever needs to be fixed or to go to the shvitz right after Shabbat.
Right. So his actions on Shabbat are clearly what?
It's clear that he's attending to the malacha. So he's going there for the purpose of eventually doing malacha.
Right. That he is like, but he's not, I mean, he's not going to do malacha now. We're not,
Well,
not
no, but
choshesh.
like something that
We're not
right.
choshesh that it's not like Marit Ayin. And that's really my question. Is this Marit Ayin? It's not, I don't think it's Marit Ayin. It's not like we're choshesh that we see him going to the field. Oh, he's going to be picking fruits.
He's preparing on Shabbat for
Yeah.
after Shabbat.
He's preparing on Shabbat, and it's clear that he's preparing on Shabbat for after Shabbat.
Right.
And even though he didn't say a word, right? He didn't say anything.
You see this better from the next line about the Tzurba Mirabanan, because we
Okay, so read the next line here. Parrots, Max. Reuben Parrots.
Itzurba mirabanan havamre shamata meshachte v'imamaret hamre chamra ichasle. Right. So if it's a Talmid Chacham, we might say, well, I got lost in his thoughts and he just ended up walking somewhere. V'imamaret, and if it's an amaret, we might say that he lost his donkey and he's looking for it.
Right, and a donkey, you're allowed to go look for him and call him back.
Right.
Wait, Max Buchta, what do you got?
I thought that the Hatam and Hacha are our two cases of the Sadeh and the Petach Medina. With the field, it's Mocha Chamilta that's why you're going to see what it needs. But in the case of the Petach Medina, you could have the Havamina that either the Am Haaretz is lost because of the donkey, or the Talmid Chacham is in the Sefer and just gets lost and happens upon the Petach Medina. That's how I thought that the Hatam and Hacha were working there.
All right, you might be right. I didn't read it that way, but you might be right. That's might be right. Now you're saying Dafka but also by the Merchatz. He's going to the end of the Merchatz. Maybe he's lost in his thoughts and he's walking to the end of the town. By either case, it could be also the field. He went for a little walk and he ended up going all throughout his field, but he was really busy. I thought that both of these reasons, Am Haaretz, that like either he's a Talmid Chacham or he's an Am Haaretz, we might have a terutz for both of these cases. That's the way I thought of it. Because
what? And therefore what?
And therefore who would be forbidden? Maybe only a person who's the middle guy. I don't know. A person who doesn't own donkeys.
So what is the case where it is clear? It's muchamilta. What's the case where we know somebody's going to do malacha if it's neither of those two? Because I don't know what's before it.
So it has to be those two. Like in those two cases, muchamilta. In some other case that we haven't looked at, like it's on muchamilta.
No, these cases they're thinking to be makil because they could be doing something else. We don't know for sure what they're going to do, no matter who it is. Amaretz, right? I thought that was pretty clear. But there's another case from Nachum that you're saying was before that it is muchamilta.
What is that case before? Yeah.
Maybe a lot before. I don't know.
I don't remember actually. There was another case. I don't remember.
It's an Eruv case. I think it's about establishing an Eruv by walking. And then Rabbah has a statement about that. So I think the Hadarbe is referring to Rabbah's statement about the previous case.
What about the Eruv?
Let me double check.
I sort of understood this sugya as like, on the one hand, it seems like he shouldn't be doing this because it's clear what he's doing, and then the answer of the tzurba de Rabbanan is like exceptions now. Now, after we gave this general rule that if you're going to your end of your field, it's clear that you're involved in malacha. And then we said, well, we're sort of hesitant about that whole idea. And we say, well, there are cases where it wouldn't necessarily be. and it's kind of like the halacha is being given, and then there's a kind of withdrawal, like a pushback against the halacha. That's the way I understood it, but maybe I'm misreading it.
I
I'm
thought in
reading.
the Rashi on Mocha Chamilta here seems like he's saying that the field case is different than the Petach Medina case.
Why? What does read the Rashi?
So he says, "Mai bai besadehu, im lo leda mai tzricha, berachmana amar mimtzo chavtzecha." Right? There's nothing else by the field. There's nothing else you could possibly say you could be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And v'chein bepetach medina aval chutz le'ir ad hatzchum lo mocha chamilta de la'aruve letzorach machar kazel. Right, and that seems like the medina case is different because maybe Ruben, this is the Eruv case that you were talking about.
No, but the din is the same in the two cases. Either one is forbidden. So how could you say, well, here it's clear and here it's not clear? It doesn't make sense logically.
But one is to go
They're
to the
both forbidden. Then
one is going. Oh, sorry.
Because
sorry.
they're forbidden. Okay, earlier you said it's not Marasign, which is absolutely correct. Marasign is when a person thinks you're doing something which leads a person to think you're doing a davar usur on Shabbos. Here it's not really a davar usur. Here it's something which we have now rabbinically forbidden because it could be something that, so it's not Marasign, but it shares some of the properties of Marasign that it depends on what people can think about it. That's part of its definition. If a person could think, or normally would think, why is he standing there? Like the other cases, a person goes, the case you get, person goes to the merchas. Oh, he's not at the merchas, but he's loitering near the merchas. Merchas was already it's usually chutz la'ir or chutz t'chum Shabbat. And the other examples in the Gemara, if a person stands close to the end of the T'chum Shabbos, which is where, in Los Angeles, day workers would gather around hardware stores or gas stations, and people who knew that if you want to hire somebody for the day worker, you go to around the gas stations. But what's the person doing hanging around T'chum Meir? Oh, he's looking for some. He might be looking for some workers after Shabbos. No one's choshesh for him on Shabbos that he's getting workers. No. So therefore, it's not Mars Ayin per se, but it is dependent upon what it's how can I say, what it looks like the penultimate act before being Mechal Shabbos.
Right. I'll get to you, Joel, in a second. But I was thinking it's kind of like the difference between like Devar She'eino Mitkaven and Psik Reisha. If it's Muchacha Milt, in other words, why do we say the Psik Reisha is forbidden? Because you say, well, I just want to cut this head off. I want to have a head to play with. Yeah, but so your intentions have nothing to do with an Isser. But the action itself speaks louder than your intentions. The action is doing the Isser. So here too, it's kind of like.
But it's not here doing the Isser. It's not an Isser.
It's not an Isser. It's an Isser d'Rabbanan to. Well, why is there an Isser
d'Rabbanan not to put yourself in that kind of situation where people would assume, not because it's Marasign, but people assume, and therefore, that's that wonderful verse from Isaiah that gives us these additional halachas in the spirit of Shabbos, as we would say, right? You always use that. It's not that it becomes a law, but it's basically in the spirit that it negates the spirit of Shabbos.
All right, Joe, what do you want?
I just wanted to clarify the case that's going on here, because I was looking back, right? This seems actually is very apt to what just happened. It's like it's Yom Tov, and you want to have your Tehum for Shabbat. That's the next day. It's Yom Tov that falls the day before Shabbat, and you want it to like extend your Shabbat Tehum. So like at the end of Yom Tov, you kind of wander over to the boundary of the Tehum, so you can be Kona a greater area after Shabbat. Or when Shabbat comes in after Yom Tov, and they're like, well, wait, you're walking on Yom Tov to prepare for Shabbat. That's a problem. They're like, no, if you're walking to a place where it looks like you're just wandering and you're keeping your mouth shut, like no one knows what you're doing there. But if you're like sitting in front of the bathhouse, like, come on, everyone knows exactly what you're doing.
So wait, in that case, so you're saying in our case, dafka, it's permitted.
Exactly. Yeah.
But our case says lo yelech adam l'sof sadeh.
No. The case of Yom Tov is permitted.
Yeah, the Eruv case.
In the case of the Eruvin case, it's permitted. And that's when it says hatam. So when it says hatam muchacha milta, it's our case.
Exactly.
Hatam is here. That's the way I said it. Hatam is here. It's a little bit confusing because whenever it says hatam b'hacha, hacha is always the ikar sugya. And the ikar sugya was what you were just discussing about Shabbos and Yom Tov. That's hacha. Hacha lav muchacha milta. And then we have these, why? Because you're saying because either he's a Talmud Chacham or he's a Amaris, and either way, he's maybe going to the edge of the town. But here, it's not. It is muchacha milta that he's trying to go to his field. Nobody gets lost in his studies and walks through his vineyard from tree to tree, looking at the trees. So muchacha milta means, I guess, let's just keep it the simplest way we can say it is muchacha milta is that it's a parent to whom, either to other people or maybe even to himself, to just the world in general, even if he'd be the last man on earth. It's the action is speaking louder than the words. The action is speaking louder than what he thinks. It seems like he is involved we're not cautious that he's going to pick a fruit, but he is involved in his business matters. It's kind of like you can't talk about business, but you could think. But hirurim mutarim. So here is like almost like the same thing. It's like talking about your business. By going there, it's like you're talking about your business.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
But wouldn't that be more
act? Well, what did they say? Who we got here? We got a lawyer here, Ruben. What's the term? Prima facie. Right. It's just like. Am I pronouncing it right?
I think so. I mean, last I checked.
Oh, well, you're the lawyer. I suppose.
What does prima facie mean?
It means on the surface of the thing, just on the surface.
In other words, to all normal observers, this is an act of this is dealing with thinking about, involvement with your business. It's chafatzecha asurim. You're involved with your chefetz, and you're going to say, but I'm not saying anything. But it's true that you're not saying anything, but you're doing something that shows it. If you were just thinking on your couch, maybe that wouldn't be forbidden. But here you're doing something, so that's like speaking about it. So that's like it becomes, like you say, prima facie. You can't. That's apparent what you're doing. All right, I think we got the idea. Muchacha milta. That was the main point, was to get that term. And thank you, Joel, for clarifying exactly the Gemara.
Sorry, just one more point. I think Josie was saying something interesting earlier. I think there's an inyan chadisur of like a chana. That's what it is. Because I understand that like you're thinking about your business when you're to the edge of your field, but like when you hang out next to the bathhouse, you're not thinking about your business. And I think the problem here is that it's somewhat of an achana lechol. It's like you're just preparing for like right after Shabbat. Like you're hanging out near the bathhouse, so as soon as Shabbat is over, you just walk in. But like as soon as Shabbat is over, you start fixing your trees. And I think that's also something that the Sigas bring forward.
Right. Lashich is like hachana lechol, right? But you're allowed to do it for certain cases.
That's where the mocha milta comes in. I think the mocha milta makes it so it's actually hachana. And we're going to see this over and over. If it's possible in some way that I'm not actually going to, it's hard to say that a walk is hachana, right? But the mocha milta makes the walk more clearly hachana. Without that, could just be a walk and I'm allowed to randomly walk around. So I think we'll see that again in the other cases.
Okay, I'd like to go now to thank you. I'd like to go to the Mishnah in Shabbos. And what I'd like to do, maybe I'd like to call on somebody to read, but not translate, just read it because we've all seen it and I just want to go. I'll stop you though where I want. This is the Mishnah in Shabbos in Daf Kuf Nun. And because I don't have so much time, I want to just, Sarah, you want to read? I know you're leaving early. Maybe
Yeah, I'm happy to read. I am leaving early. The time change has made my faculty meeting conflict. Okay. לא ישכור אדם פועלים בשבת, ולא יאמר אדם לחברו לשכור לו פועלים. אבל ממשיכים על התחום לשכור לו פועלים, ולהביא פירות, אבל המשיכו לשמור, מביא פירות בידו. כלל אמר כל שאני oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, we got to translate it, even though I said not to. Let's translate.
You just said we were going to.
I know, but I just you read it too. I guess when I read it, I can follow it better.
Okay.
You can't hire workers even before Shabbat to work on Shabbat. And the Gemara is going to ask, what's the difference? If you can't do it, then your friend can't do it. Right? Again, and now a new din. Ein machshichin al atchum lischor lo polim v'lahavi perot. You can't go to the edge of your field to hire workers after Shabbat, presumably, or to bring fruit after Shabbat. Obviously, you can't do it on Shabbat because you'd be carrying. But you can't like walk to the edge. Say again, Sarah?
You can't sit there and wait. You can't walk to the edge of the Tchum and then wait for Shabbat to end and then cross the Tchum and take the stuff there by saving yourself, whatever time you save by walking or in advance.
Right. Or you could even time it. You don't have to wait at all. You could time it perfectly. You get there just at, say, Shabbat. Aval machshich hu lishmor. But you could go to the edge just to guard.
Just to keep watch over the produce.
Guard what? In other words, we're talking about guarding outside of the tchum. You're going to the edge of your field, and now you would like to go outside of that area, but you can't because of Shabbat. But your goal is not to bring fruit, but your goal is just to chase away bandits or chase away snakes or something. Why is that all of a sudden mutter? So we've seen reasons why. Can anybody remember why that's going to be mutter?
I don't think it's chasing away snakes or bandits. It's just lishmor. Like you're not doing any actual actions. You're just like looking over it. Like you're just basically on a stakeout.
Well, lishmor means to guard.
Because as soon as you're doing an action,
you're not doing a malacha. You're not doing a malacha, but you're doing. Well, that's exactly the point. You're not doing a malacha, but you are doing, and you're going to shout at some ganav, get away. I think that's so. Joel, why is this permitted?
It's because it's just the field happens to be outside the techum. But if we're in the techum, you'd be able to do it. And so it's really just a boundary case and not a case of like doing something.
Exactly. The action itself is a mutter action. If you'd be in the techum, you could shout at ganavim to run away, and you could scare snakes to go away. But you, as long as you didn't kill them or something, but or capture them. Maybe snakes is not the best example, but let's say ganavim, to shout at them to go away. That you could do even on Shabbat. So you're going lachshich to do something which the thing that you're trying to do is permitted on Shabbat. That you could do. That you're allowed.
This is also a loss of money, dror de mumona. And if you don't do it, it's a clear loss of money. Not being marviach, making more money. So also,
well, it's not Tisha B'Av. We're not worried. It's not the night. It's not the Var Haven.
But it's Drabanan, and that we're talking about right now. And we'll say that it's not. This was not the intent of the halacha for persons.
I don't think it's to lose money because In the case of the Schor Poalim, it could be that if I'm the first one there to get the Poalim,
I know, but
I
don't
might
think
get a
that's
better
considered
price.
right. So that's a
So
judgment
that would also
call.
save me money, but I'm not allowed to do that.
That's a judgment call, and I think they've made a judgment. I hear you, but I say I think they've made a judgment.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Umevi perot beyado. Is that saying that you're able to carry produce on Shabbat itself with the intention of watching it after Shabbat? No.
No. Well, I'll explain that. But wait, before we get there, let's go to where it's. Look at Rashi. Aval mashich hu liot. See that aval mashich hu? It's like kind of in the middle of all the Rashis. Liot karov litzeit lishmor perot v'zeh davar hamutar b'Shabbat lishmor perotav. It's permitted on Shabbat to guard your fruit. Im hayu b'toch tchum. Like Joel said, if they'd be in your tchum, you could do it. So the act that you're trying to do is a mutter act, so we're letting you lachshich for that. You can't lachshich to do something that's usser, like to hire workers, but we can let you lachshich for doing something that itself is mutter. And now what about this? Umevi perot biyado. What does it mean? Umevi perot biyado. Well,
your intent. I thought it was your intention is to go guard, and until it's machshich, and then you could go get it after Shabbos.
No. It's two cases. Aval machshich hu
No, I agree with Ori.
Ooh, wait! I'm going to tell you the way you should learn it. if I can be rude. Aval machshich umevi perot biyado. In other words, le. It really should be le mevi perot biyado. You can go to the edge so that when Shabbat ends, you could go and get perot from outside the tchum. Why? Because if the perot would have been in the eruv, well, you could have brought them. I guess you can't pick them, but you could have brought them. Joel.
Well, I think, I mean, not to say that Rashi's right, but Rashi, I think, reads it the way that it was being read before, right? That it's like you were
not like me.
On the Tchum to guard your field. You happen to find perot after Shabbos, you can still bring them, kind of thing, right? Because Rashi says, right? When
you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. Now I remember. Now I remember how to learn it. You're right. I learned this a little while ago. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Take it back. I take it back. I'll say it again. Once you've gone lishmor, now you can maybe perot. You can't lachshich. It's coming to say like this: you can't lachshich in order to bring perot. But if you're lachshich in order to shmor, in order to guard, and then once it's after Shabbat, you could actually bring the perot. That's what it's saying.
Right. Just to tie it back to the previous Gemara, we might have thought.
Good.
We might have thought you can't bring back the perot because, like, we might have thought that, like, you're going there to bring the fruits back after Shabbat, and there is that problem of, like, let's call it.
It's exactly muchacha milta. It's almost like muchacha milta. It's like when you go and get the perot. Now we're going to say muchacha milta. It would seem like you were going there to get the fruit. But we don't say that. We don't say that because we say no. It looked muchacha milta. It was clear that you were going to lishmor. Now that you go and bring some fruits back, that's your own business. That's not why you went, and it's clear to everybody that's not why you went. I think I saw somewhere, but if you bring in a basket, if you bring them back like a huge amount, then you're not allowed to do that, because then it is muchacha milta that's why you went. If you went to get there, you pull out of your bag, you pull out of your pocket a plastic bag, and now you fill up a whole bunch of apples. So now it changes. Now it's not allowed. I think I saw. I
think the lishmor is like a little of a barrier that helps you. If there's a reason that it can't be muchacha milta, because even if I'm taking a basket, I'm going to lishmor. Whatever I do after.
No, if you have a basket, then it's clear that you're going to collect.
But because I actually could be going to lishmor, and that kind of ends up being the actual motivation of my walking, and it's a logical motivation of walking that's not actually usher on Shabbos. It's interesting. I mean, I think they're purposefully inserting this liminal barrier with the lishmor, and I think that's how I understood it. It confuses what my motivation is right?
Yeah, but the guy, the
more
onlooker
complicated
doesn't
to
know.
just go ahead and take fruit.
The onlooker doesn't know why you went, and he'll, if he sees you going,
Good.
he'll think you're going lishmor, and so therefore it's okay. But if he sees you with a bunch of baskets in your hand, then he's going to say, "Oh, he's not for that." So then that changes the story.
Okay, I don't know about the baskets, but I know that what's happening is there's a valid reason that's allowed on Shabbat.
Yes, what's happening here is that exactly there's a valid reason to go, and now once you went, it's not going to overturn that valid reason just because you bring home some fruits. Exactly. Klal Amar Abba Shaul, Kol Shani Zakai Ba'amirato, Rishai Ani Lachshich Alav. So he says like this: anything that I could say, in other words, really, it shouldn't really be say. It should really be do. But he can't say do. Now, it really should be anything that I could do. Anyway, I could do this on Shabbat, like lishmor. Rishai Ani Lachshich Alav. So I can also go lachshich for that same thing. I can lishmor on Shabbat, so I can lachshich for that. So why doesn't he say to do? Because when he says ba'amirato, why does he say ba'amirato? Because there are some things that you couldn't do, that you couldn't actually do them. Like, well, no, you could shmor. I don't know why he says it.
That maybe amirato, amirato a guy. The kind of amirato guy to do.
Right, he says, in Rashi says about a goy, o goy b'Shabbat la'asot l'motzei Shabbat reshai ani lachshich alav. Anything, in other words, it's the same din. He's just saying the dinim that pertain to what we can tell Goyim to do on Shabbat, that's the same dinim as what I can lachshich alav. What can I tell a goy to do on Shabbat? Well, obviously things that are mutter for me to do.
Do we have the same Rashi? I have le'amro lechavero o lenochri, so it's not only to a goy, it's also to a Jew, and it's just, and it's not. I don't think it's about doing it on Shabbat itself. It's anything you could tell anyone, whether Jewish or not Jewish, that they have to do on Motzei Shabbat.
Right.
Then
that
you're allowed to wait and do.
Right. So what are examples of that?
I guess guarding produce.
Right.
We're going to see mitzvot are going to be, we'll get to the mitzvot that are an interesting example as well. But yeah, after Shabbat, we need to, we really need to.
What about bringing stuff for a burial or something like that?
That's for sure. But I think even short of that, I can't prepare for the game we're going to play after Shabbat, actually, right? But can I talk about it with my family? We're going to play this game after Shabbat. It's not really hachana. It's just talking about it. It's not, it's not actual malacha, but, we could discuss it. Does that make sense? We're going to play Trivial Pursuit after Shabbos, guys, but it's outside the Eruv. So I can't go and get Trivial Pursuit on Shabbat. But I could talk about it. I'm going to do a mutter thing after Shabbat. It's just, it happens to be I wouldn't be able to go, I couldn't take an action on Shabbat to prepare for it, but I could speak about it.
Right. And I could tell somebody to go after Shabbat and get the Trivial Pursuit because the action, because the action of getting the Trivial Pursuit is not forbidden per se. It's only forbidden because it's outside of Shabbat. Because it's outside of the Eruv or outside of the Tchum. But the action itself is permitted action.
You couldn't lachshich on it either, but you could go make sure nobody else takes it. I guess.
You could lachshich alav. On getting
not if it's out of the Eruv. Isn't that the same thing as?
No, lavi
can't walk over to the edge of where it is. Only if there's a lishmor in that case. But again, I'm just trying to think of a case of like something you would want to talk about on Shabbat that is for after Shabbat, but it's not usser. It's not an isur in itself. It's an interesting in-between area that I think we're just trying to define it.
Well, there was this case about the animals, right? There was a case about the animals telling you're allowed to go to the edge and call your animal. Well, let's continue in the Gemara here. Here, Sarah, read a little more in the Gemara. So now we're going to ask about why does it say l'chavero? It's chaver. If I can do it, then obviously I can tell my friend to do it.
Right. Maishnahu, maishna chavero, amar Rav Papa, chaver nochri. Makiv le Rav Ashi, amira le nochri shvut. Ela amar Rav Asi.
What does that mean? It's shvut. So what?
So then, if it's then it shouldn't be. If it's just a shvut, then it shouldn't have been a problem for you to lachshi chalav. Or we're talking about the polling now, rather. Sorry. It shouldn't be. I'm sorry, I've confused myself. If someone else has this quickly, that's fine. It's been a long week.
It should be asur because it should be asur. It should be asur because it's a shvut. If it's a goy, then why could you tell the goy to do it? It should be asur amir lakum.
Well, it is asur. I thought it was saying, it's pshita. We already why do you need to tell us this is asur? We already knew it was asur. It falls under the more general category of.
But the Mishnah said it's mutar, no? Lo yiskor adam po'olim, v'lo yomar la'adam l'chavero l'skor l'po'olim. If it's forbidden for me, then telling a goy to do it is also forbidden, right? Exactly. It's forbidden because of shvut, and we already know this from other mishnayot. Okay, good. Go on. Ella. Rachel, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think you got the wrong matriarch again.
It's okay. They're all interchangeable.
Ela
amar Rav Ashi, afilu tema chavero Yisrael hakamash balan lo yomar adam lechavero liskor li pa'alim aval omer adam lechavero hanireh she'ta'amud imi la'erev.
Oh, so this is a new din. It's actually telling you you could tell your friend. Sorry,
you could say hire those
friend,
workers,
but you could tell him something else. What could you tell him?
You could tell wouldn't it be nice for you to hang out with me this evening?
Right, and there exactly, and it's obvious to both of you that you're going to build the sukkah together, but you don't say it. You just say, "Come and hang out with me."
Yeah, so then it's sort of indirect.
Exactly.
Is this the birth of Nishtov Shabbos?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if this is the birth of Nishtov Shabbos Geret, like. The Yiddish don't not to speak of such things in Shabbos. Sort of.
Well, that's when you violate the idea. They say, I'm not talking about money, but let's talk about money. It's like we learned this also. We'll learn it again. But when we talk about the prayer for sick people on Shabbat, we say, please give a refuah shleima to this person. They say, Shabbat hi limzok. We're not supposed to really we're not supposed to cry out on Shabbat. Refuah krov alavo, but the refuah will come.
But we also have this with hirhurim mutarot, right? You can, it's okay to sort of whisper or hint or intimate.
No, hirhur is a thought, not a speech. Hirhur is a thought. Intimate. Right. Well, that's you're allowed to do. Intimate. You're allowed to intimate, but not whisper. But you're allowed to intimate. You're allowed to say, "Come and meet me tonight. Let's do something together tonight." Where you before Shabbat had already discussed and planned maybe to build a sukkah, and so you say, and you said, "Let's do it on Sunday," and then you on Shabbat you say, "You know what? Why don't you meet me? Why don't we get together this Motzei Shabbat?" So you didn't say anything about building sukkahs. And he knows what you're talking about.
And they wonder why there's pogroms. Guy thought he's going to hang out and have a beer with the rabbi, and now they're building a sukkah. But in terms of money, we'll probably get to that later. Money usually is defined by having a specific sum. If you can talk in general, yeah, but once you get to a specific sum, then you're kind of nailing the situation. And when and that becomes Mekach Memkar.
Right.
It's
We see that we see that in when you want for an aliyah, you shouldn't maybe say the exact amount that you're going to.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's not only because the guy who says Matana LeBeit Knesset, it's not only because they're often cheap, but it's because, however, in terms of the Hanhaga,
I was in the shul.
All the Hungarian shuls had specific amounts.
I was in the shul.
That's for a mitzvah. That's for a mitzvah, so there's going to be even more leniency.
Right.
I was in a shul on Shabbos in France, in what's that? I forget the name of the city now. Strasbourg, yeah, Strasbourg, and they went to the Ashkenazi synagogue, the real Lithuanian Ashkenazi synagogue, and they gave me an aliyah, and he gave me the Mishaberach, and he said, "Bavur shahaoleh yiten €20 lebeit Knesset," and I said, "Amen." So I figured, oh no, I have to give €20. So I came Sunday morning and gave €20. But they were very clear about the amount. Okay. Anyway, so go on, Sarah. Umatnitin mani.
Umatnitin mani, ki Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. Titania, lo yamar adam l'chaviro, hanirei shetamodi mila erev. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha omer adam l'chaviro, hanirei shetamodi mila erev. Okay, so this who is this Mishnah like? It's like Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha.
You said you can do this.
Yeah, because we have a little breakdown that says that.
I just want to repeat though. When it says the Omer lechavero, it comes to teach me that you can't say to your friend, but you can intimate. Go on.
Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha ki Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha.
Oh,
V'amar
halacha.
V'amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'itama de Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, dichtiv mitzoch hafsecha v'daber dabar, dibur asur hirhur mutar.
Oh, so there you go. Hirhur. Yeah. This is in the category of hirhur because he knows that we're going to build the sukkah, and I know we're going to build the sukkah, so we're both thinking about it. But I didn't say anything. I didn't say. I mean, I don't know if this means you can say, if you can, instead of saying the word shekel, you say apples. I don't know if that counts. I think it has to be mamish. You don't say anything. You just say, "Come and meet me." Coming and meeting a person is mutter. It's very similar to the idea of going to the field, and I'm just going to the field to go for a walk, or I'm going to the edge of the town. Well, those are usher actually. But the point is, here's an action that it's not muchacha milta that I'm trying to do a malacha here. It's muchacha. What it sounds like he just says, come over to have a beer with the rabbi. All right, so let's skip a little bit ahead. Where
if I can clarify, the way Josie said it before. Is it thinking or intimating? Those are two different things. You might call it co-thinking. We're both thinking about it.
Yeah, so exactly.
You say something that helps enable the co-thinking, but it's not that you're talking about it, mamish. So it's still hirhurim. It's thinking, basically.
Exactly. It's co-thinking. All right. So go on. I want to skip down about 15 lines where it says the first one on the line is lo ra'u. It might be the next thing in my daf. I don't remember, but I'm on the Gemara now. Near the bottom, it says lo ra'u, and it says v'dibur mi asir. Is that the next piece that I gave? Yeah, v'dibur in my sheet. It's dibur mi asir. So wait, you're on mute if you're talking, Sarah.
No, I'm here. V'dibur mi asir. Rabbi Rav Chisda, the Rav Hamnuna, the Amri Tarvayichu, Cheshbonot shel mitzvah mutar lachshbon b'Shabbat.
Oh, there's our cheshbonot in the song. right? Cheshbonot mutarim. Cheshbonot shel mitzvah mutar b'Shabbat. Maybe that's what he means in the song. Cheshbonot mutarim, he means cheshbonot of mitzvot. And that he means actually what? To say them. I think
it seems like it seems like he's saying it's okay.
Dibur miyasur. Right. We're talking about dibur here.
It seems like he's saying it's okay to say them.
So I can say cheshbonot of mitzvah. Everybody has to give. Actually, I was in shul this week, and the guy said, we want to build a pergola, and it's going to cost 100,000 shekels. We want everybody to donate something. He didn't say how much to donate, but he said the price of the thing. I don't know if it's a mitzvah to have a pergola, though. I don't, but that's already debatable. Okay, go on.
Amar Rabbi Elazar, poskim tzedakah le'aniyim b'Shabbat. So he says you can.
Now here it doesn't mean actually giving money to the aniyim. I don't think it means actually handing money. I think it means calculating how much to give them, or declaring how much you're going to give them. Rabbi,
right.
It's about like deciding an amount, like distributing.
Every ani comes to the shul. There's a base of $20 they get. It's a psak. I mean, it's a
posting tzedakah la'aniyim, but we're not actually giving the money until Motzei Shabbat.
No, right.
You're just deciding how much people get.
We're talking about it. Come back, Motzei Shabbat, I'll give you 50 shekels. Come back.
It shows that certain kind of shul meetings could be held on Shabbos. In the Shilohs and Shubos of Rabbi, I'm forgetting his name, Freehoff, who's the rabbi in Pittsburgh of the Reformed Temple, and he was the expert. And he has like 7 volumes of shoots in English. He has that question. He says, "Can you have a shul meeting on Shabbos?" And he brings these halachos.
Can you go to? We're about to see, you can go to the basilica.
I'm sorry, right?
The Gemara here is going to say you can go to the basilica.
There you go. Okay.
Wait, so you're finished, Sarah.
Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi amar Rabbi Yochanan mafrikim pikuach nefesh upikuach rabim b'Shabbat. V'cholchim levet take nisiyot lefekeach einiskei rabim b'Shabbat.
Oh,
so you can do whatever is necessary for pikuach nefesh, and you can also go to the Beit Knesset to.
I think. Well, yeah. What does pikuach
deal with
Shabbat?
I don't know. I thought it was like sort of dealing with, kind of the needs of the community or something.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I think exactly. Nothing like the first one, pikuach nefesh is, let's say pikuach nefesh, but pikuach rabim just means, taking care of the people. Like who's going to bring, food for this woman who just gave birth? We need volunteers, or I don't know, or should we build a mikveh this big, or should we build a mikveh that big? Whatever the needs of the community are. Pikuach rabim, taking care of the needs of the community. I guess it could be the government can sit. The government of Israel can sit.
City council.
Yeah.
City council meeting.
City council meetings for the Jewish city. I mean, Pikuach rabim b'Shabbat.
Well, it's Knesset's already a circus, so it works.
You're saying that the Knesset, they don't actually take care of the state, so that doesn't count. Okay.
You're saying the circus is already winter on Shabbat, so okay, that's what I understand.
V'holchin lebatei knesiyot lefakech al iskei rabim. So you can go to the houses of gathering or synagogues to deal with community matters. So you could have a meeting. The only time that everybody is available for the shul board meeting is Shabbos Mincha. So you could do it on Shabbos Mincha. You can't write. Okay. V'amar Rabbi Shmuel, go on.
V'amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani amar Rabbi Yochanan holchin leteatzriot v'kirkasiyot ubasilikot lefakeach im iskei rabim b'Shabbat.
So you can go to other places.
You can go to other places where there's like communal stuff being done, theaters and circuses and basilicas, whatever.
And this is all stuff that is not. So this is all saying that dibur is mutar, but this is dibur for the iskei rabim.
It also seems like it's not only dibur, right? It's like you can go to this place for the purpose of engaging in this. It's not like, oh, this happened to come up. You can like really plan to be doing this.
So we're about to explain why. So we're to read a little bit more and you'll see why.
That's
a shidduch. That's a shidduch. Mashtichim al tinokot. That means you can make shidduchim, but what does he mean? You can even talk about money. I'll pay $1,000.
Yeah, right. Because those are financial trend. Like
I'll pay $1,000.
A race b'Shabbat implies a financial transaction, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Or at least, yeah.
Or we could talk about someone that does that professionally, right? Someone that it's his living, like is he allowed or not to make shidduchim on Shabbat? And that's a legitimate question because not only is he making money, but it's also like involved in business.
But he's allowed to do it because it's a mitzvah. And
I also think the shot here is that it's not dealing with like a shadchan; it's dealing with like parents making shidduchim.
Okay.
I also read it that way.
It's husser then.
Fine, but they're right, and they're making their financial transactions. They're saying, "Okay, I'll be willing to pay $100,000 to buy the apartment if you'll pay $100,000." And they both agree. They'll contribute $100,000 each for buying the apartment for the new couple. They can do that on Shabbat.
Okay, but I'll tinok ulamdo sefer ulamdo omanut, and you can also arrange for someone to teach your kid to read or to do some sort of craft.
And Rashi says by omanut, the hanami mitzvah he the kol she'eno melamdo omanut melamdo listut. If you don't teach your child in a profession, you're teaching him to be a thief because he'll have to get food somehow. Mitzvah yalfina and mikra the kedushin da'isha niknis. Okay, then that's a Gemara in kedushin that explains this.
And clearly not listening to the Gedolei Hadar Bismanenu.
Yeah, the parent. No, the Gedolei Hadar are the other rabbis.
I guess so. I agree with you.
All right, go ahead. Amar Kra.
Amar Kra mumso chavsecha v'daber davar chavsecha asurim chavsei shamayim mutarin.
So all of these things are in the category of chavsei shamayim. Hafatsecha asurim says the Mishorer, the poet says hafatsecha asurim, but Rav Landis said at the beginning of the class today, but chavsei shamayim are mutarim. All right, on that auspicious moment, we'll take a break and Sarah can go be excused to her duties.
What time should we be back?
Let's come back at 10:06, 10:07.
All right, perfect.
It's not our main focus.
You do?
You know what our main focus is? Well, the end of that Gemara, the example, I understand the principle, but the examples of things that are chaftzei shamayim are very interesting and maybe very even provocative. Like, and I see why Rashi came in to sort of explain the Lamdu Umanuyot, but that's I was pretty surprised by that. And even wedding business, like we sort of lift that to the holy realm, even though it can really be a monetary thing that's deeply business, or right. It was, I think.
What about buying a house in Eretz Yisrael on Shabbos?
Or in a Jewish neighborhood.
No, in Eretz Yisrael, Yishuv Haaretz is a mitzvah.
Right.
The Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to buy a house. Of course, you can't draw up the contract on Shabbat, but you can buy a house.
There's no mitzvah of Yishuv Washington Heights.
There's no mitzvah of Yishuv Washington Heights, no.
But the example of to teach a child to read or a profession as a holy endeavor is a very interesting. I just feel like it's a pointed way of pointing out what chafatzei shamayim could be. I don't think it's b'mefurish just mitzvahs in that example. It's actually just chafatzei shamayim, holy endeavors.
Things that God wants. In other words, things that are mitzvot. And essentially, things that are mitzvot are related to mitzvot. And purvu requires a shidduch. and not stealing. It requires a.
That's such a stretch. I mean, that's Rashi's answer. But I think learning here.
Well, learn that Gemara in Kedushin. Learn that Gemara in Kedushin. There's a Gemara in Kedushin. It's not Rashi. It's a Gemara in Kedushin.
I think a lot of the examples that are given are ones that are like lav dafka, an absolute immediate connection to a mitzvah or the performance of a mitzvah, and are generally like several steps removed from a more formal mitzvah, but are considered to be like good things, right? Like, yeah, like it's good to plan, you know, the new Beit Knesset building, and it's good to talk about acquiring these things that we will then eventually use for mitzvot because you need the thing, right? That like, it's good, like that basically these are things that are viewed as positives both generally and religiously, whether or not they are the immediate fulfillment of a mitzvah.
Well,
seems to be the underlying.
I don't think we should go to say anything that's generally a good, nice thing is going to be permitted. It has to be in.
No, but I think that it is true that a lot
mitzvah.
of these, you're not doing a mitzvah in that particular action. They are seen as facilitating meaningful
A heksher mitzvah. It could
aspects
be-
of religious life.
So we have a term for that. It's called a heksher mitzvah. Exactly.
But also,
But
there are
not any-
also
it's not
things
just-
that are not
it's not like-
chafetzecha.
What?
There are things that are not chafetzecha, and you made me think, Lexi, maybe the public needs.
Public needs are chafatzei shemayim. Private needs are chafatzecha.
I agree
In
with
an
Lexi. I
interesting-
don't think that it's because they're in the formal category Chachshe Mitzvah. I think it's because they're in the kind of conceptual, emotional category Chaftei Shemayim. Like, and then that's more about the feeling of sort of like, it's less about something being formally a mitzvah and more about it being in a sort of emotional category of this is for the kind of communal Yiddish neshama kind of good. It felt to me.
Well, can you think of an example of something that's not a mitzvah that you would think is permitted based on what you're saying?
Is the public good a mitzvah?
No, that's a different category. But
That's what I was saying, because it's not chafetzecha, it's not yours.
Right. It seems like we're broadly
Yeah.
talking about this notion of chaftei shemayim that is not being defined as exclusively a more formalist notion of what mitzvot are, but things that are considered to be not just your own personal business.
Okay, I can hear that. In order for the good running of society, that society needs families with children. Society needs people who are educated, people who have omanut. These are societal needs. I can see that. The examples sort of fit into that
Yeah,
category.
but that's chaftei shemayim. It's a broad interpretation.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean nothing. You know, it's not, you know, doesn't mean shtuyot. It has to be something.
Right. It's interesting to think of what the examples are. What's an example of something that doesn't include? What's an example that's not in the list that we would like to add to the list?
I mean, it's not saying that you, I don't know, can go out to the forest and look and see whether there's good schach that you can use for your sukkah roof. And I think if it were, that would maybe be in a chavetzecha category, but it doesn't feel like it's in the same flavor of our chavetzecha.
You're right. I think that's a good example. I think that's a good example of something that we wouldn't say. Even that's your private concern. Even you're saying, even though it's a mitzvah, maybe it's your private concern. I hear that. Possibly, because you could say all money making is for mitzvahs. What do I use my money for? Except to, you know, buy food for Shabbos and feed my family. Those are all mitzvahs. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Finding schach is definitely not a mitzvah.
Right, because
the whole building of a sukkah is not a mitzvah.
Well, it's a heksher mitzvah.
It's a heksher mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. It's a heksher mitzvah. Although there's one aspect of a heksher mitzvah that makes it like a mitzvah, just tangent, and that is that if you're osek the heksher mitzvah, you're putter from another mitzvah. In other words, an osek mitzvah putter mitzvah. So if you're building a sukkah, you don't have to stop it if there's another mitzvah that you're on top of the ladder. You don't have to join a minyan for mincha. Sorry.
All right, it's a very interesting conversation. It's really very interesting. It makes me think about it. But I think I like where we came to the idea that it's that Chefsei Shamayim means the the public good in general, and that even these examples of l'shadech tinok is actually a public good in a sense. It's not just an example of a mitzvah. I'm not sure if that's the way the poskim are going to take it, but I mean, you'll have to see the examples.
But that is a very good Yashrut interpretation.
Yeah, I think it is.
I'll use it in fundraising. Thank you.
Use that. I think it's good. I think Hefsei Shemayim is the public good. I think that's good.
The nafkamina is that there are some mitzvot that are malacha, and I think that's a very illustrative example.
Shchita.
Right. Plenty.
Mitzvah lishchot.
There's mitzvot that are muktzeh. There's all kinds of things. So this is a very specific category. It's not just mitzvah. It's Hefsei Shemayim. It's a different category.
Well, we'll see when we talk
more
about
of this example with lulav on Shabbat, right? You can't use lulav on Shabbat because even though it's a mitzvah, it's still a melacha, right? I think Ori makes a very valid point. It has to be something that's for the good of the public.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think we're in agreement, which is a good thing, but also maybe I like to have multiple voices, but it's also...
I mean, also the lulav is a good example because it's not malacha.
What's a good example?
Lulav is a good example because it's not malacha, as in, and it's this kind of like
it's rabbinically prohibited. It's not a malacha, right? But
I would just say.
Wait, what's the point about the lulav? I didn't get the point about the lulav.
As in, it might be that I think that everything that's mitzvahdik is inherently Shabbosdik. Actually, it seems like there's this kind of vibes category of things which are Shabbosdik because they're good, which is not the same category as things that are Shabbosdik because they're mitzvahs.
I don't think it's good. I think it's chafetzecha. The key word is chafetzecha.
Well,
Shabbosdik because they're for God.
I mean, what about this?
It's still your chefetz. You're supposed to own a lulav, and I think that's why we don't carry them on Shabbat.
First of all, we're not talking about malachas here. We're talking about malachas. We're talking about can we talk about building a mikveh? Can we talk about shidduch? Obviously, we can't build a mikveh, but we can talk about it. We can't, we're just talking. It's not a question of whether it's a malacha or not, because it's for sure not a malacha. We're talking about things. And when Yeshayahu prohibited from us from talking about things, what did he include in that prohibition? And did he include tzorchei tzibur? Did he include what about like talking about feeding the cats on the street? Can I get people together? I'm trying to think of an example that's like, I don't know, not really a tzarech of the tzibur, but like I want to collect money for feeding the cats because I think we need to feed the cats on the street.
I want to remove myself from supporting the idea of Chatzei Shemayim being Tzorchei Tzibur. Because Baruch Hu has a special interest in, as you had said about Shidduchim, Kosh Baruch Hu, that's what we say, B'Sher, has special interest in Anim, has a special interest in Anusim and all that.
In Omanut, but what about Omanut?
So they don't become good enough, and you're right. That's a good one, because that really is, I agree with you, that heads towards public welfare. But often you say public welfare, it leads to all sorts of heterim that would just not be permitted.
Right.
If we extend, I need a better term. That's all I'm saying. I need a better term.
But this is also, we can narrow it down further, but this is still also not obviously giving us heterim of like doing a lot of these things, right? It is at most a heter on speaking about and discussing or calculating stuff. It's still like, nobody's arguing, yes, you should start physically building the Beit Knesset on Shabbos because it's like a good thing for people to have. So I do also think that it's like useful to be more specific than just saying general public good, because I think there are ways to narrow that down. And also that like we are still at most talking about like, there's a difference between putting your Shabbos time to think about general economic improvements in your own life or tachlis improvements versus things you can do to better the.
We did say lefakeach al Rabbi, al iskei Rabbi. I don't know. You could probably come together and talk about building a bridge.
You can't build it.
You can't build it, obviously, but you can talk about it.
Thing. It's about chafetzecha. I just want to put into your head the idea that this is like a socialist bend. I'm not, advocating particularly capitalism, social. But the point is, chafatzecha, right? The point of that pasuk is what is your stuff? It's not even mitzvot. Really,
Well, there's three, right.
Public stuff, public things are not your business.
I understand.
They're
I
our
understand.
business, and that's
Yeah, I
different.
agree.
Yeah,
That's what it
you
seems to
sound
be.
like a socialist.
I agree with you. I think that's what it's saying.
Or a
Let's go. I think
communist.
we've hashed this topic enough. Let's go turn the page or to my next place, which is Ein Machshichin. That was in the Mishnah. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah. This is by me. This is on the next page, Kufnun Amud Bet, about 7 lines down. There's 2 dots. Ein Machshichin. Tana Rabbanan. Maise bechasid echad. There was an occurrence with one chasid. Shenifratzu lo peretz betoch sadehu. There was a hole in his fence. V'nimlach aleha ligadra. And he decided, in his mind, I better go Motzei Shabbos and fix that hole so my sheep don't run out. I don't know, whatever he's got in his field. He wants to keep his field guarded. Now, this is a thought that he had. This is even talking. V'nizkar sheshabbatu. But then he all of a sudden remembered, wait a second, what am I doing thinking on Shabbat about my chafatzim, my personal stuff? V'nimna oto chasid, v'lo gadra. He decided he's never going to fix this fence ever again because to remind himself that he shouldn't think on Shabbat about his private matters. Naase lo nes, but a miracle occurred. Va'alta bo salaf, what is it called? A juniper, not juniper. What are those things? A pimento. A pimento tree grew.
It's a caper tree.
Caper. That's what I meant. Caper. There you go. So I knew it was something you put in olives, not pimento, but caper. Yeah. Caper tree grew. The ones that grow in the kotel, the western wall. Altal bulabod salaf umimena haita parnasato uparnasat anshe beita. And he started collecting all the capers and sticking them in olives and making a lot of money. And he invented the olive with the caper. So this is like this actually is going to come up in the Shulchan Aruch as midat chasidut, which is even though you could think about your businesses on Shabbat, it's only speaking that's forbidden. You shouldn't even think about them. And this, by the way, is why I sent you this. I don't know if did you guys read this source that I sent of Miktav Meliyahu? Did people read that? No? It's actually a beautiful, very beautiful piece that he writes there. But he talks about this, about you should feel like all of your malacha is done. And like the Gemara says, is it possible, Sheshet Yamim Tasei Melachtecha, is it possible that you could do all of your work in 6 days? Your work is going to take much more. What do you mean Sheshet Yamim Tasei Melachtecha? So he says, you should feel as though you've done it. Anyway, it's actually probably, in my opinion, the best piece in the Miktav Meliyahu. But okay, let's go. Maybe it's just because I haven't read that many of the pieces, but that one I read. Let's turn to one more Gemara, the very end of the Sugya, right before the Mishnah. It says, Ema kol, here, maybe Joel, you'll read. Ema kol sha'ani zakai.
This is on Kufnun Aleph Amud Aleph. Is that where we are?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
about 12 lines down, but it's also in my source sheet, I think.
I know, but if I can see it in the original, then it's. But maybe.
Yeah, I'm also looking in the original.
I'll do it off your sheet because I can't find it. Hold on.
It's Kufnun Aleph Amud Aleph, about 12 lines down. The first one on the line is Shebet Tchumi.
Okay. Ve'ema kol shni zakai b'amrato rashani lachshich alav. All right, so that's what we had at the end of the Mishnah, right? and I don't remember whose name it was in anymore. But say that anything that I am allowed to, permitted to say to somebody else to do, I can sit on the end of the techum waiting for Shabbat, or wait to the end of Shabbat and be ready to do it. All right. Klal la'tuye mai, right? So what's this klal including? What extra information are we getting out of that? La'tuye hai ha detana rabbanan emach shichin ala techum la'avi behema. All right. So there's this breita, you can't sit on the end of techum to bring after Shabbat a big animal or a domesticated animal. Haital medet chutz techum korela v'hiba, right? But if it's sitting, my cow is right outside the techum, I can whistle and bring the cow, right? Or call its name or whatever it is, and bring it that way.
What does it mean, lahavi behema?
Is to literally lift up an animal and bring.
Oh, exactly. To lift it up. The second to call it, I could do. I could actually call it. I don't even have to. I could go to the edge of my thing and call it, and it'll come, and that's fine. But to lift it, I can't do on Shabbat because it's out. It's carrying. But what if I want to go to the edge of my field and then when Shabbat ends, I'm going to lift it up and bring it in? That I can't do. Because I can't carry it on Shabbat. I can't go and do. I can't. So since I can't do it on Shabbat, I can't do it. I can't lachshich alav.
Exactly. We saw the same thing with perot, right? Similar idea, but I can call to it. I could be obviously can't call to perot, but you can call to an animal, and the animal will potentially listen to.
Right. And I can't tell a goy also to go and
bring it
and bring my animal on Shabbat.
But you can tell him to call it. So that's
tell him to call it.
Klal amar Abba Shaul kol shani zakai b'amretor shani rashai ani lachshich alav umachshichin lepakeach al iskei kala v'aliskei hamet lavilo aron v'tachrichim.
All right. So you can go to the edge of the town in order to Motzei Shabbat.
Get a veil or get a
deal with right, exactly. Get a veil,
clothes for the dead,
get a shroud for the burial of the dead, because these are Cheftzei Shamayim.
But
you could talk about it on Shabbat, I guess, also. But you couldn't bring it on Shabbat.
No, but you can get ready to bring it. Ve'omrimlo, you can also say to this non-Jew, lech l'makom ploni, v'imlo matzata b'makom ploni, havim makom ploni. Right, so you can say go get it from here, and if it's not there, get it another place. Or you can say, if it's not available for 100, get it for 200. So, and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer uvad shelo yaskirlos chum mekach, but you can't give him the final bill amount that you're willing to pay. I think is what it sounds there. So,
wait a second, but is he going to go on Shabbat or after Shabbat?
I think he's going to go after Shabbat.
I think it is. So it's not necessarily a goy. It could be a Jew even.
It could be a Jew. Okay, yeah. So fair enough.
It could be a Jew. You're giving him instructions to do after Shabbat. And as long as you keep it vague, you don't tell him the exact amount.
Yeah.
It's permitted.
But
okay. That's the Gemara's.
Meaning the Tana Kama is saying you could even say the amount. Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yehuda is Polak and saying you can't say the amount, right?
Well, the Mano Matayim, kind of right, but the Mano Matayim, I think, is taken. We'll look in the Beis Yosef, but I think it's taken to mean rounded figures, not exact figures, even that. No.
Okay, Rashi says this Humekach Mane v'matayim.
Yeah, what does that mean?
So meaning whatever the Tana Kama is saying you're allowed to do, Rabbi Yossi but Rabbi Yehuda is saying that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But sometimes we quote the statement of one opinion and give it the explanation of the other. You know what I mean? The Rambam does that a lot. He quotes one opinion, but explains it like the other opinion. I'm not sure about this one.
I think Rashi seems as machloket, but I don't think you have to see it that way necessarily, right? That it could be, yeah, I agree with you, but as long
no,
as
I think it's a machloket. The question is, how strong is the machloket? In other words, is it?
Wait, I'm curious to hear how Rav Joel could see it not as a machloket.
Well, because as long as you don't give him like, I'm willing to go up to 1,000, or like an exact amount, like you get 100, 200 something. I don't know, like you get it in kind of like vaguer terms. But if you give it like, don't go above this, or I want you to pay exactly this much, that becomes a problem. So.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, there was this Tosfot here. Yeah, actually, let's look at this Tosfos quickly. Ein machshichim ala tchum lahavi behema. You see that Tosfot? Back to where we were.
Is it still me?
I'll read it. Yesh svarim de garse machshichim. We just said ein machshichim ala tchum lahavi behema. You can't go. This is actually interesting Tosfos. You can't go to bring the animal, right? But there are books, and we said because you're carrying it. Yesh svarim de garsi machshichin lefi im yesh sham burganim, because if there would be their little houses, holechu mevi, you could go and bring. In other words, if the eruv would go,
I don't think it's about.
Not eruv. If the tchum Shabbos would go all the way to there, you could bring.
Yeah, because it's not about carrying them. It's about like leading them with like a lead or something like that. I think at that point.
Or I think calling them, let's say calling them with a whistle. I think like this. You can't go there. Again, ein machshichin ala tchum lahavi behema. Yesh svarim de garse machshichin. You could go. Lefi she'im yesh sham burganim. If there are little houses there, then the tchum Shabbos would let you reach there. And even though there aren't any, but the action is really a permitted action. It's just that the circumstances don't let you. But the action could be a permitted action to walk over there. Umevi, and he could bring the animal by calling it, I think. Ubetosefta garis ein machshichin. V'yesh lomar da'ayri b'behema she'enu yechola lavo b'ragleha. So that's when Tosfos says that we're talking about actually lifting it up. In our version, you have to say you're lifting it up. Kigon tle katan. Eli im kain yisu b'katef. You have to carry it on your shoulder. Shafilu yesh mechitzot eno rashai lahavida asu the taltel balei chayim shehem muksa. You couldn't carry it even if there would be an eruv because it's muksa. So you can't lachshich al that. But if it would be the girsa, if the girsa would be that you could machshich, then it would be talking about a different case. Then are we talking about a case where the animal is an adult and all you have to do is whistle? And then you could machshich because the only reason you can't get there is because there aren't enough houses along the way. But if there would be houses, you could go. So he has two different ways of reading it. But he's telling an important principle that if there would be houses there, in other words, the fact that there aren't houses there doesn't mean you can't go to the edge of the town. Because the etzem of the act is permitted. I'm just wondering what to do now. Yeah, let's look at the Shulchan Aruch or at the tour. Does anyone like to read the tour? Maybe Aaron?
Sure. Mimso chavtzecha, darshu chazal chavtzecha asurin, afilu b'davar she'eno oseh shum malacha, kagon shmi'in shme'ayen nechasav lir'ot ma tzarich lemachar, or lelech al petach medina kadeh shemeher miyad letzet b'layla merchat. Sorry, some allergies.
Just go on. That's what we've seen.
וכן, אין מחשיכין על התחום כדי לזכור פועלים, אבל מחשיכין על התחום כדי להביא בהמתו. הייתה עומדת חוץ לתחום,
Oh, wait a second. So you could, אבל מחשיכים על התחום כדי להביא בהמתו. What does he mean?
Your cow is outside of the tchum and you
How are you bringing it? By carrying it or by calling to it?
I think you'd have to go physically go get it. I don't think you're carrying your cow.
Why? The Tosfos just said that it could be a Tele Katan.
Yeah, though.
Yeah, the Prisha sort of brings that up. The Tosfot.
Yeah, what does he say?
לפי שאם יש שם בורגנין, הולך ומביאה, אבל בהמה שאין יכולה להלך ברגליה, כגון טלה קטן, אלא אם כן יישאוהו בכתף, ואפילו יש מחיצות אינו רשאי להביא. תאסר לטלטל בעלי חיים שהם מוקצים, אסר גם כן להחשיך.
Right. So what are you allowed to do? You're allowed to lachshich if you're going to call the animal, if you're going to whistle to it. Kedei lavi behema, by whistling.
Where do you see whistling?
Well, lavi, how do you bring it? By calling it.
I think these sorts of animals, you have to like physically go get them. I don't think they respond.
No. With cows, you just ring a bell and they come. That's the way you do it. You don't have a leash on 100 cows or 100 sheep.
Fair point.
Wait a second. Could it mean? Yeah, I had the same problem. But does it mean that you walk the cow?
Yeah, you walk the cow. You don't have to whistle. You walk the cow. You come there and you he sees you. You maybe walk
Bessie, and you walk Bessie and talk to Bessie.
Exactly, because that the actual action is permitted on Shabbat, and so too l'lachshich alav.
And what does the Burganim do then? The Burganim allows it to be not any problem of what?
Of tchum.
Of tchum. So you have the Burganim that add on to the tchum.
No, I think the point is like this, that
not a tzalad, which you have to carry.
No, the point is like this. If there even
though
though
there
aren't enough Burganim right now, but the action that you're doing to walk to the edge of the town is permitted because you don't know if there are enough Burganim or not. You don't know until you get there. And so the action of walking to the edge is permitted because maybe you can actually get to the animal. You don't actually even know where the animal is. You're just walking and maybe you'll find it, maybe you won't. So you could walk all the way to the edge and then after Shabbat, keep going.
Yeah,
because there might be Burganim all the way to the animal. Even if there aren't, you can walk to the edge. That's the way I understand it.
I think it's Davka not calling it because the next seif is about calling it.
Well, okay, fine. I hear you, fine. But you're bringing it in some way. You're not carrying it. I don't know if you have a leash. I don't know if leash.
You're walking it.
You're walking it, fine.
You're walking it.
So the next seif is saying something a little different. Hayta omedet chutz l'tchum yachol likro la kedei shetavo. In other words, if you get to the edge and you don't see the animal, so you wait there. And then after Shabbat, you'll keep going. But if you see the animal, you can call it and tell it, come, even though it's outside the tchum, you can whistle to it and it'll come to you and it'll come into the tchum now, and then you can keep walking with it. You couldn't reach it, but you could call to it. Wait, look at this. Look at the Beit Yosef. V'ken ein machshichim al tchum l'schor po'alim, and then he says aval machshich al tchum lavi behemto hayta omedet chutz l'tchum yachol likro la kedei shetavo. So here, Aaron, read the Beit Yosef.
B'reit Hashem v'atos v'gorsim ein machshichin v'kadvu v'zel shonam yesh farim degarsi machshichim לפי שאם יש שם בורגנין, הולך ומביאה, ותוספתא גרסינן אין מחשיכין. ויש לומר דאיירה בבהמה שאינה יכולה לבוא ברגליה, כגון טלה קטן, אלא אם כן יסעו בכתף, שאפילו יש מחיצות, אינו רשאי להביא, תאסור לטלטל בעלי חיים שהם מוקצים. I mean, this is just the summary. This is the longer
version. Right. That's just exactly. He just reading the Tosfos. You're right.
And also the Prisha summarizes.
Yeah. So go to the Gimel.
For the Beit Yosef?
Yeah. No. The Shulchan, the tour. וכן מחשיכים.
וכן מחשיכים על התחום כדי לעשות צרכי כלה, ועל המת להביא לו ארון ותכריכים. ויכול לומר לחברו שיחשיך כדי שיביא לו. והוא אומר לו, לך למקום פלוני, לא מצאת במקום פלוני, לך למקום פלוני, לא מצאת במנה, כך ב200, ובלבד שלא יזכיר לו סכום דמים. ולומר לו, כך בכך וכך דמים.
See, here's where I said exactly what my point was. Here he sort of says both opinions. He says, tell him to go, and you can tell him mana or matayim, but don't tell him the amount. But what do you mean? You just said the amount. That he's paskening both opinions here. That's what I was saying about the Gemara there. Because I think what he's saying is, in other words, you can't, right? Bilvad shelo yazkir lo schum damim v'lo mar lo kach b'kach b'kach. In other words, he understanding the mana or matayim to be general amounts. If it's 100, fine. If it's 200, fine. Whatever it is. He's not telling him, I want you to buy this at 150 shekels because that's the price it should be, and I don't want it for any other price. He just says if it's 100, 200. So it's different. It's different from the way Rashi read the Gemara for sure. Right? Everyone sees my point. And he's saying, don't say the amount, but you could say mano matayim, which is the amount. So it must mean that, and I think that's what let's see, is the Beis Yosef say anything about
that amount of time are different things, right? It says you can mention you can mention money. You just can't actually be completely specific about the amount. You can make it clear that there is going to be money for the transaction. You just can't say it will be this exact price.
Exactly. But Rashi said that when it said lo yaskir et haschum in the Gemara, it meant don't say mano matayim. Okay.
I don't find the way you're explaining it disagrees with Rashi.
No?
No.
Why not?
Unless could you say it again? What you're saying?
Well, our Gemara, what did our Gemara? You tell me what our Gemara says. Our Gemara, the first opinion was you can say mano matayim, and the second opinion says no, don't mention the amount. And Rashi said don't mention the amount, don't mention mano matayim. Now, what does he say here? He says lo matzata b'mana kach b'matayim. So he's saying the amounts. Ubilvad shelo yaskir lo schum damim. And then the Torah says, but don't say the amount. But you just said the amount.
That makes sense. I agree. He's not reading it the way Rashi is. I agree with you.
Okay. Right.
Rashi's reading it as a machloket, and this is not. It's reading it as a caveat rather than a machloket. A writer.
Right. Exactly. A writer. Yes, it's a writer. And therefore you can sort of accept both the idea that you could say mano matayim, but you can't say a more specific amount. Okay, let's continue in the tour. I guess let's continue in the tour. I want to get to Vav. So go on.
הסוחר את הפר לשמור לו פרה, אסור לו לקח שכר שבת. לפיכך אין אחריות שבת עליו. שכר לחודש או לשנה מותר לו לקח שכר שבת, לפיכך אחריות שבת עליו. ולא יאמר לו תן לי שכרי של שבת, אלא יאמר תן לי שכר החודש.
So wait, so what is, so first of all, we're seeing here this idea that you can buy, or you can pay him in a kind of global fee. You can't hire somebody for Shabbat, right? You can't pay him for Shabbat. And therefore, what does it mean, ein achrayut Shabbat alav? What does that mean?
He's not responsible for it's either you're not responsible for his Shabbos or he's not responsible for
what else could it mean? What do you say, Max Buchtal?
I think it means that if it gets lost or something happens to it, you're not responsible for paying damage.
If it happened on Shabbat. Exactly. You're not a shomer schar. You're a shomer chinam. You're not a shomer schar because you can't be paid for Shabbat. You're a shomer. So there's different dinim about what if it gets lost. Sachar lechodesh or leshana mutar lo lekach schar Shabbat lefikach achrayut Shabbat alav. But if you pay him globally for the month, then if it gets lost on Shabbat, you would have to pay. Okay, Vav. Let's go to Vav.
חוצה שמיים שערי, כגון חשבונו של מצווה, לפסוק צדקה ולקח על עסקי רבים, לשדך התינוק, לארס, ללמדו ספר או אומנות. ורב מאיר מרוטנברג כתב, דווקא לדבר אליו אם רוצה להשתכר, אבל לשכרו ולהזכיר לו סכום מעות אסור.
So wait a second. So you can't. So he says like this. Rav Meir Rottenberg says you can't talk about the exact fee that you're going to pay him. You can say that you're going to right. Dafka ledaber elav im rotze lehistaker if he wants to be hired. Aval lesachro v'lazkir l'schum ma'ot asur. You can't say okay, you're hired and I'll pay you $150 an hour, or whatever it is. But you can just get interested if you could just see if he's interested in working bichlal. And that's kind of the Nish Shabbos correct. Not allowed to talk about money. Here, Aaron, read the Beit Yosef on Vav.
וחפצי שמיים שערי כגון חשבונו של מצווה. בפרק שואל ובפרק כמה דכתובה. וכתב הרב מגיד בפרק כ"ד, שלא הותר שבות בשביל עסקי רבים, לא אמיר לגוי ולא שבות אחר, לבד הפיקוח והתעסקות בדברים בלא מלאכה. שאסור בצרכי יחיד, משום ודבר דבר.
So he's saying a very big thing here.
Right, so it's the only thing that is allowed. You don't think that you can do Amir Lagoy for Tzarchei Rabim. Don't think you can do other Shvut for Tzarchei Rabim. The only thing that you're allowed to do is have a conversation.
Wait, is that what he's saying? Just have a conversation? Wait, let me read that again.
Ze levado hutar. L'davar mitzvah o l'tzarech rabim. Right.
By the way,
you can't do shvut. You can't do amir lagoy. You can't do any other shvut.
Right. Lo hutar shvut b'shvil iskei rabim v'lo amir lakum for iskei rabim.
You can just do pikuach
and no other shvut. Levad hapikuach v'taskut b'devarim below malacha she'asur b'tzarkei yachid mishum davar davar. In other words, Amir al-Akum is not because of Davar Davar. Amir al-Akum is a separate gezerah of the Rabbanan. The only thing that the Iskei Rabim can undo is the thing that Davar Davar forbid, not other Shvutim.
That is interesting just because a few weeks ago, Amir Lagoy is under the Davar Davar in his schematic. 307, which is
in the tour schematic.
Yeah.
Well, again, this is a Rabbi Magid, not necessarily the tour agrees. Right. Or maybe maybe he's right. Maybe there's a machloket about what exactly. Good point. Maybe Amir al-Akum, according to the Rabbi Magid, is a different gezerah, but maybe according to the tour, it's the same gezerah. Or maybe he just grouped it together because it's Amira. Even though he may agree that it's a different gezerah, but he grouped it just, the grouping is just a structural thing. Okay.
I will just point out, or maybe just right now I understood it, that there's chafat secha, and that which is not chafat secha could be devar mitzvah, chaftzei shemayim, or it's sorach rabim. In other words, it's not, before I was saying Sorach Rabim is a Chefsei Shemayim, but he's not saying that. He's saying all you need is make sure it's not Chafat Secha, but one is Chefsei, Sorach Rabim, or Chefsei Rabim, or it's a Chefsei Shemayim, which is Dvar Mitzvah, then that takes care of a lot of the problems that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. In other words, there's two ways of getting out of being hefetzecha. It could be either it's a mitzvah or it's hefsei rabbi. The two different things.
And that gives you that's the bridge that you build. Oh, you talk
That's
about
the bridge, exactly. That's the bridge.
That's the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge
That's
is hefsei rabbi. Everybody needs.
Anim and the rest may very well be hefsei shemayim.
You know the joke of Chelm. There was the bridge that they had, and it was very rickety, and people would fall and get hurt, and they'd have taken to the hospital. Everyone, you know this joke?
No.
So they decided to. It became very tiresome to take people all the way to the hospital every time they fell off this bridge. So they built a hospital right under the bridge, so that when people got hurt, they could go right to the hospital. And then the hospital, the more people got hurt, they expanded the hospital, became a big hospital. And all the people who got hurt would go to the hospital. And then finally somebody came and said, well, why are you doing this? Instead of building this hospital, just fix the bridge. And they said, and put the hospital out of business.
That's a Jewish story. It's a Jewish story.
Because that's the sort of describes the government of Israel in a certain sense, but you don't want to put you don't want to close down the businesses. Okay,
the capitalist counterpoint to our earlier socialism.
No, that's socialist. Once you have the hospital, you're going to put all those people out of work. Got to keep the business going. Anyway, so go ahead, keep on going, Aaron. Val psikat tzedakah.
In the Beit Yosef, yeah?
Yeah.
פסיקת צדקה לעניים בשבת תמהרן בפרק שואל, דעתנן אין מקדישין, ומצאתי בשם רבי...
What does it mean, אין מקדישין?
I'm not sure. We don't do Kedushin.
No, Beitza. I'm sorry. Ein Makdishim. We don't do. What is Lakadish? We don't
make things hekdesh.
We don't make things hekdesh when
it's Yom Tov or Chol Moed.
Or Shabbat. No, on Shabbat. On Shabbat or Yom Tov. In other words, the Tanan Ein Makdishin. We're forbidden to make hekdesh, to give something to the temple. Let's say I want to makdish $100 or my erech. There's a whole sugya Gemara erechin. There's a halacha in the Torah erechin. How much a certain amount of money for a person, my worth. I want to give my worth to the temple. You don't do that on Shabbat. I'm not allowed to do that on Shabbat. So how can val psika tzedakah la'aniim b'Shabbat tamaran b'perek hashol daha ein makdishin. You're not allowed to say the words, I give this $20 to the temple. So how can you say, I give this $20 to a poor person?
ומצאתי בשם רבינו חננאל שלא אסור אלא להקדיש כלי ידוע, משום דמחזק כמלקח וממכר, אבל לא אסור לחייב עצמו בדיבורו לגבוה.
Explain that.
Rabbeinu Hananel says actually the only thing that's aser is to be makdish a specific pre-existing object, because it looks like you're engaging in a business transaction. But
because this object is in other words now moving. Well,
I guess you're transferring owner. You're making a status change of ownership on.
Yeah, something like that. Well, I'm sorry. I'm reading ahead of what I'm putting into this what the Magen Avraham says. But yeah. Continue.
But it is okay, or it is not aser to obligate yourself with your words to legavoa to do hekdesh for the temple.
No, the diburo legavoa.
Right, with your
in
word.
Other words, the prohibition
I can't say like this. I can't say like this pencil would be hekdesh, but I could say I am going to dedicate a pencil
$20
or $20 to the temple.
Right. I could give $20 to the temple, but I can't give a $20 kli to the temple. That seems what he's saying.
I don't think you can give $20. I think you can say I'm going to give.
That's what I meant.
ועדיין אין נוח לי, דהה אין מעריכין, לאו כלי ידועהו, אין מעריכין, לאו כלי ידועהו. ואפילו הכי אסור, עד כמה
Wait,
שאפשר.
daha ein marichin. You
We
can't.
don't do haracha, and that's not
What is
about.
haracha? Haracha is to say my worth is I'm giving my worth to the temple,
And
and that's not a
is,
kli yadua. It's not a kli. I'm not giving myself to the temple.
that would be l'chayev atzmo b'diburo, presumably, but that is not with a kli yadua, and it's still aser, so it's not clear. So the Rav Magid has landed on an indeterminate place.
No, so adkan lashon haran. Right. So the Ran.
Okay, still the Ran. It was back to the Ran.
That was the Ran. That the Rabbeinu Hananel gave.
I think the Ran is the Ran. The Ran is quoting Rabbeinu Hananel.
Exactly. The Ran is quoting Rabbeinu Hananel and not agreeing with him. Ad kan lashon, and let's say he just leaves it like that. Veneer Ali. Now I think this is the Beit Yosef talking now.
Veneer demarich dami shapir lemekach umemkar dehavi kekona ish ze machar shana deli ten erkol lehektish. So actually, haracha is actually like mekach umemkar. So he seems
because you're actually giving this money, you're giving this person to the temple.
So he lands with Rabbeinu Hananel.
Right. By the way, this is all very, very relevant. If you're wondering, this is like some kind of hakira. It's a hakira, but it's all very relevant because this is this question. Can you give money on Shabbat can you say, I'm going to give 20 euros? Like in Strasbourg, they wanted me to give 20 euros. Can you say, I'm going to give 20 euros to the temple? First of all, according to the Ran.
Appeal.
What?
It's the Kol Nidre appeal.
Or the Kol Nidre appeal. According to the Ran, what would the halacha be? Forbidden.
According to Ran, you can't.
According to Ran, it would be forbidden. According to Rabbeinu Hanan, it'll be permitted. According to the Beit Yosef, who does he defend? He defends the Rabbeinu Hananel. So it's permitted, says the Beit Yosef. But the Ran is still a very important opinion. Now go on.
But the Ran can't really, like, the way I understand the Ran here is like he's just confused by this and can't think of an answer for it. But it's not like he can disagree with the Gemara, like Psikat Tzedakah Lani b'Shabbat. Like the Gemara says explicitly that you're allowed to do that. So I don't think anyone could really stand on the Ran as a reason not to do it, but they could sympathize with the Ran's confusion.
All right, I accept your tightening of the concept here. You're right. I think you're right. He's right. The Ran is perplexed why this Gemara says you could do tzedakah. You could give tzedakah. Okay. V'hakolbo.
V'hakolbo katav b'siman nun chet b'shem ga'on echad tedavke hekdesh mizbeach lo debedek habayit asur sheyotzeh mirishuto l'rishut gavoha v'dome l'mekach u'memkar. אבל עכשיו שנודרים להקדשות ספר תורה או עטרה או שמן למאור וכיוצא בהם, מותר לפי שעדיין אין מייחדין שם דבר שיוצא מרשותן, ואינו דומה למקח וממכר.
It should be שום דבר. אין מייחדים שום דבר.
עד כאן, וזה כדברי רבינו חננאל שכתבתי בסמוך. Right, so that hekdesh is not...
Wait, so what is the halacha according to the kolbo? How does it come out according to the kolbo?
He says that we can do tzedakah because the thing we're not allowed to do is hekdesh, but hekdesh is a reshut transfer to the temple that is like mekach u'memkar, and we are not doing hekdesh anymore.
What about an actual Sefer Torah?
That seems to be okay with him because we're not transferring ownership from our domain to the temple's domain. Or to anyone's domain, presumably.
But what about Rabbeinu Hananel? What would Rabbeinu Hananel say about a Sefer Torah?
Rabbeinu Hananel would say, I think Rabbeinu Hananel would say you can say, I'm going to give money for a Sefer Torah. You just can't take a physical Sefer Torah and say, this Sefer Torah is hekdesh.
You can't even say, I have a Sefer Torah at home, I'm donating it to the shul. You can't, according to Rabbeinu Hananel, if it's a kli yadua, it's forbidden. I can't say, I have I have a shofar at home. Motzei Shabbos, I'm going to give it to the temple. I'm going to give it to the shul. Can't say that, says Rabbeinu Chananel. The Kolbo says you could, because why?
Because you're not actually transferring ownership. And so there's no,
or because it's not actually going to it's only a special thing by the temple, by the Holy Temple in Jerusalem.
Hekdesh is like an immediate...
Right. If you were to say this thing is hekdesh, you're not actually doing, you're sort of making a you're making a declarative statement, but you are not making a ritual speech act that is actually transferring its ownership.
Right. Okay. Nice way to say it, because he does say,
why not?
Sha'adayin ein miyachadim shum davar sheyotze mirishutan, that goes out of their reshut. He says like two.
I have to carry the Torah to be the same thing. I'd have to literally.
I think it's when I'm saying this Torah is hekdesh, I'm not saying anything because the temple doesn't exist. So
You are saying it's the shuls. Can you take back? Right. If you say I'm going to give I pledge to give my shofar to the shul. Can I go home and my wife says no, don't give it? So can I say, you know what, I'm not going to give it? Or
I don't think, like, at least the way that I was reading it, being makdish something is different from saying that you'll give someone something who's not God. In that I think if you're being posek things to posek tzedakah, that feels equivalent to me to making an internal decision to give a human being a thing. Whereas I think the issue with being makdish is that you're really making it change states in some profound way. It seemed to me.
In other words, you're saying that by pledging something to the shul, it didn't actually change ownership yet, even though maybe I have to keep my word. And when I do keep my word and Moshe Shabbat, I give it to the shul, then it will change ownership.
I think I'm saying more that not only am I making it change ownership, but I'm making it kind of a fundamentally different thing. Like I'm changing its property and my ritual obligations to it in a really profound way, in a way that I wouldn't even be if I gave it to you, another person.
But when I say this is hekdesh, it becomes hekdesh in a way that if I say this Torah is for Cherry, this Torah will belong to the shul, that doesn't necessarily immediately affect the transfer of the Torah.
Well, what if it gets burnt? What if I go home and the whole Torah is burnt up?
This is a Kenyan question.
Do I have to give them a different Torah? Do I have to give them a different Torah?
If I said I'm going to give that Torah, then I don't have to give a different Torah. If I said I'm going to give a Torah and it turned out that I don't have another Torah, it's not clear that...
So wait, if I said I'm going to give that, all right. You're saying it doesn't mean, that's not, you're saying my example is not a proof that it's owned by the shul.
I had to double check Hilchot, but if you do say I'm giving this Torah, I think that's it. You're stuck at that point.
But what do you mean you're stuck?
It doesn't transfer. It's not a Kenyan.
You have to give that Torah, and if it gets burnt, you don't have to give that Torah.
Because it was burnt, but not because, but you were, yes, exactly.
But what if you say I'm going to give 8 Torah? I also am
then
stuck.
You have to give 1, and that's a different story.
Either way, I'm stuck. Either way, I have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not the same thing as it already transferring. It's not a transaction yet, is it? It's we're talking about a pledge. And I'm just asking, in Hilchot Kinyan, what is the status of that kind of statement? It sounds like there's a chiluk here that hekdesh is an uniquely immediate transaction, not just a pledge.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out what's the nafkamina. I'm trying to figure out how would it?
How do I get at it?
How can we find a case that shows that this Torah is still really mine and not the shul's, even though I pledged it? I can't go back.
If someone damaged it, then they would owe me money, and I might not owe the shul anything.
Good.
Why?
If I said I pledge that this Torah will be tzedakah, and I'll give it to you guys after shul, and over the course of Shabbos, someone else burned my Torah. They burned it while it was mine.
So I collect the insurance money, and then I would say, well, sorry, shul, I can give you the burned up crumbs, but that's it. And I'll keep the insurance money.
Aside from the issur of burning a Torah, it's a great system for, looking like a good a good shul goer and getting
Yeah, exactly. Arson. Don't do arson. Yeah, I think that's a good. Thank you, Aaron, because you gave I think that's a very good example, a good way to show it, and I think that's an interesting idea. Next time, I think we're going to continue because I want to do I want to do the Shulchan Aruch really on these things, and you'll see the Magen Avram has a different explanation of the exact thing we just discussed now of the hekdesh, and the Rav Moshe has a response to that. Okay, so until next week, shkayach.
Shkayach, everyone.
Thank you.
And